Hello everyone and welcome back to Baron's Den. For something a little different, I thought it would be fun to speculate and theorise what a potential future Slaanesh team could look like. This comes about because I think whilst there was a Nurgle team, we were never sure if they'd ever look at doing one of the other Chaos Gods, giving them a team each. And then when the Khorne team happened, it really does leave the door open for a Slaanesh and a Tzeentch team. Now, a Slaanesh team has been hinted at in some of the Spike magazines. We've had I think was it the Slaaneshi Serpents or something like that? No, Slaaneshi Sidewinders maybe. So we know there's a precedent for Slaanesh teams within the lore of Blood Bowl. We're just still awaiting to see them on the tabletop. But it is one of the more obvious areas for them to dip into for a new team. So if they continue the support for Blood Bowl, they've only got 2 more teams of Legend, so you can see them adding in a few more new teams if they wanted to extend the life of the tabletop game. And so I thought, let's have a think about what a Slaanesh team could look like. Now, before I begin, a couple of things I should say. I've tried to follow the same mantra that was set out by Nurgle and Khorne. It's interesting to note that they have a Beastman, a Chaos Warrior, a lineman type, and a big guy. That is how both of those teams are made up. Obviously they're quite different, so I've tried to replicate that with Slaanesh. So we're going to be having lineman type players, Slaanesh Beastman type players, warrior players, and of course a big guy. Now this is actually a Keeper of Secrets from Age of Sigmar / Warhammer Fantasy. I don't think for a second they should have a Keeper of Secrets, but I've used it as a picture just to give us an idea of the kind of look we'd be looking for when it comes to that big guy. But more on him later. So, let's have a look at what I think could make an interesting Slaanesh team. So, to begin with, we need linemen, or women, for the Slaanesh team. Now, this is an image of one of the, I think, Blissbarb archers, which is an AOS Header Knights of Slaanesh model, but it very much encapsulates what I'd imagine a Slaaneshi lineman to look like, or linewoman to look like, and that is not very clad in armour, but very agile and speedy, perhaps lacking in a bit of core strength, and that's what I've gone with the stats. The other thing that inspired me with this is actually one of the Fumble Secret teams, and that's the Were team. On the Were team they have Were Cats, which are movement 7, strength 2, ag 2+, passive 4+, armour 8+, at 50,000. And I thought that is a great build for a Slaanesh lineman, because it's something that's very agile and quick, that can handle the ball really well, but is weak and not very resilient. And I thought that is a good stat line, I think, for a Slaanesh lineman. And it doesn't seem too overpowered in the Were team. They've got a decent win rate in the Secret League, but I don't think it's broken. However, when I came to apply that to the Chaos, obviously, a lot of the Chaos players have mutation on primary. And then I thought, oh, hang on, if I make them Ag 2+, it's quite easy to then, with general agility and mutation access, to give them block, dodge, 2 heads. And all of a sudden you've got a Ag 1+, dodging, blodging, fiend. And I thought, no, that's making it a bit too easy for the Slaanesh players to build pretty awesome players. And again, that wouldn't be something you can do in the Were team, because they haven't got they haven't got mutation access, so they couldn't get 2 heads. So I had to pay that in mind. So what I did in the end, I've gone with Ag 3+, which means that they are actually, in terms of a stat line, if you look here, pretty weak. When you compare them to the Khorne one, for example, their movement 6, strength 3, similar otherwise, and gain frenzy. So they are going to be weaker, but it's the potential that they have that makes them quite exciting. So like I said, they've got movement 7, so they're quicker than your average player. Strength 2, not average strength. They're going to be weaker, so you're going to have to look after them. You're going to have to choose when you have them in base contact. Coupled with their armour of 8+, means that they are going to be targeted by opposition players, and you are gonna lose these guys and girls. But because they're only 50,000, they are replaceable. Passing is standard 4+, Edge 3+, not as good as what the original baseline was at 2+, but still decent agility. And with that mutation access, you can improve on that. And finally, I gave them jump up as a starting skill, because I believe that a Slaanesh player needs something agile to represent the kind of player that they'd have. Something either speed or agile. And I've gone for an agility kind of skill in jump up. And it also means that they're going to be very fast when they're getting up, moving to either mark players or go after the ball or recovering from a position. They get general agility and mutation and access, which might seem like I'm being overly generous, but a beastman would have general strength mutation, which is probably an even more powerful concoction. It's true that the Rotters and the Khorne linemen don't have 3 primary access, but because this player is strength 2, and we want the Slaanesh team to represent the Slaaneshi lore, I felt it was important to give them easier agility access. I suppose you could take agility off them and put it into secondary, but then I think you would be looking at quite a weak lineman to begin with. So these aren't designed to be the same kind of linemen that you'd see in Khorne and Nurgle teams. They're not necessarily just fodder that you put in the way or support for blocks. They are very much going to probably be your ball carriers. They are scoring threats and tying up players, but they're not going to last, so you've got to be careful with your use of them. And that really fits into what I wanted to try and create with Slaanesh, would be kind of like that glass cannon. They can be deadly, they can score, but you have got to look after them. And that would help differentiate them from your Nurgle and Khorne and Chosen teams. Okay, on to the player that I called the Painseeker, largely because, torture, pain are very much Slaanesh's go-to kind of words. We've got a Blood Seeker, so I thought a Painseeker would be quite fun. Now this is one I'm not sure of what I've done here, whether I've made it too powerful, but they're costly. 120 makes them more expensive than bloaters and warriors, and you'll see why in a minute. Because the only difference from the stat line from a Chaos Warrior, for example, is that I've taken 1 off armour and added 1 to speed, so they're 1 faster than a Chaos Warrior, but 1 less armoured. They're still more armoured than their linemen, but 9+ isn't strong for a strength 4 player, so that still plays into the idea that they are more agile than they are strong. These can take a little bit more hits than the linemen, but you still have got to be careful with your use of them. They're Edge 3+, which means, again, you could look at using them as a ball carrier, because with the mutation access, they could get extra arms or 2 heads to make them a little bit better at handling the ball. And it's their skills, which I think would be controversial. I gave them Disturbing Presence, which isn't the controversial one, just because I thought, Slaanesh is very alluring, isn't it? So their warriors are probably their absolute pinnacle of beauty and being able to seduce the opposition players. So I thought giving them Disturbing Presence could represent that. And then I've given them Sidestep, because I wanted them to have some sort of agility skill to represent their god Slaanesh. But I didn't want this to just turn into another jump up team like we've got with the gnomes at the moment. So I thought Sidestep really does work well with the idea that Slaanesh can slip and slide out of danger. Oh, unfortunate use of words there, but you know what I mean. Now, having a strength 4 player who can sidestep might be a bit overpowered, and I'm willing to admit that might be something that I'd want to look at if I was going to play test these. You might find that actually this is way too overpowered. I have costed them slightly more than bloaters, because after all, they've got them, as while they're less armoured, they've got better agility, better movement, and probably a better starting skill. But they don't have regeneration, which is what the bloaters have. And obviously, I've given them. I've got strength there twice. What that should say, over on this side, that should say agility, because I've given them general strength and mutation, because I think you'd still want to put a bit of guard and mighty blow. They might not be as strong as Chaos Warriors, but they're still the strength players of this team, so they'd need general strength and mutation, so that should say agility. It also means that you can't easily give them things like dodge and pile on extra agility skills to make them into true monsters. So yeah, that's the warrior variant for Slaanesh. Again, if you think sidestep's a bit too much, do post in the comments, and yes. Okay, so the Slangor, which is the beastman of Slaanesh. This is one from AOS, which is actually monstrous infantry sized, but obviously in the game we'd want them similar size to your your Pestigors, Beastmen, Khorngors. This one was a very easy one for me to design because, again, I took one off the armour and put one on the movement to represent that they are faster but less resilient than other Chaos teams. I've given them agility access instead of strength access because, again, fits into the Slaanesh mould. And then they've got horns, and then, like the other teams, they needed a starting skill that represented their god, and I thought claws is the obvious one because often Slangors are depicted with claws. The Keeper of Secrets has a claw. A claw is very much, particularly like a crab claw or a scorpion claw, is very much a Slaanesh look, and I didn't want to put claws on every single player. You can get 4 of them, but then in the were team, which obviously the linemen were based on, this probably wouldn't be as competitive as a werewolf, which starts with claws, because that would be faster and better armoured. But I still think this is going to be a good player for them. Again, another glass cannon, because with claws and horns, it can go in there and cause, on the blitz, some real damage, but it can also, if it gets hit back, it's going to suffer. And it doesn't have the regeneration that the Pestigors have, for example. So, you'd have to be very careful with your use of the Slangors. But yes, strength on secondary and agility on primary, which might seem controversial and might make them not as effective. But I think we've already got some juicy concoctions on some of the other players. They aren't as expensive as some of the other players, so they're just another option. And finally, the Pain Spawn. We've got the Rot Spawn, and we've got the Blood Spawn, so I just went with the Pain Spawn. And the idea for this Slaanesh spawn would be that it's actually not a horrific blob or mass of flesh, that it's quite a slender figure with some interesting extra appendages. I didn't give it extra arms in the end because I thought I was going to save that for another idea for another team that I've got. But obviously its skill line, if you look, it's very similar to a Rat Ogre, really. It's got 1 extra movement, and I think it's got the same armour. No, it's the same movement and armour. So it's basically, I think, a similar stat line to a Rat Ogre. Obviously, it has mutation on primary. It's got prehensile tail like a Rat Ogre, and it's got loner like a Rat Ogre. The difference comes that instead of Mighty Blow, it's got claws. Instead of animal savagery, it's got bonehead. And I can't remember if the Rat Ogre's got another skill off the top of my head, but it's got disturbing presence as well to represent that. Well, perhaps not as alluring as you might think, but certainly something that's going to make you stop and go, what the hell is that? And that's represented by disturbing presence. So yes, similar, I suppose similar in a weird way to the Vargeist. You know, it's got claws instead of Mighty Blow, or the Yeti. So damaging, but again, a little bit more fragile than some of the other big guys. I did toy with giving it agility access instead of strength, but I just think you could end up turning it into quite a nasty ball carrier, but make it very ineffective as a big guy. And I thought, whilst that would make it different to the other teams, it would also perhaps not be as competitive. As it is, you can still pile Mighty Blow on. You can give it some of the other mutation skills if you want to, or you can save it for your block and make it a bit more consistent. But I thought the prehensile tail, very much a Slaanesh-y thing. Same with the claws and the disturbing presence. I gave it bonehead because I figured a pain spawn is probably more in tune with its self than some of the other spawns of chaos, and if anything, it might just stand around to admire itself and admire its own unique beauty, shall we say. And I thought Bonehead best represents that, because it's one of the more consistent nega traits, but every now and then it's just going to stop and do absolutely nothing, lose its tackle zones. I thought that fit better than really stupid or animal savagery or what's the new version of wild animal called again? I can't remember. The old wild animal anyway. So that is the my proposal, or my just idea of what a Slaanesh team could look like. We'll have to wait and see if one does come to see if any of my ideas were even remotely close. Someone who might look at this and think, no, that's way too overpowered, or in retrospect they might say that'd be terrible and it would get utterly wiped out. Until it's play tested, like, you're just not going to know, are you? But I've tried to go with a Slaanesh theme, but also keep it in keeping with Games Workshop's other Chaos teams. So it was something that's realistic and that you can see happening. People might talk about having Demonites in and Fiends of Slaanesh and a Keeper of Secrets, but we've seen that they haven't really dipped in with demons with the other two mono-god teams. So I still think it's probably unlikely that we'd see maybe a Demons of Chaos team in the future at some point, but I think for a Slaanesh team they'd keep it mainly Mortals and Beastmen and then a Spawn. So just to show that you can actually build some rosters, because sometimes you put together a team and think, oh yeah, this would be a good idea for a team, and then you work out you couldn't actually afford a starting team. So this one would be a bit of everything. So you've got the Pain Spawn, you've got a couple of Painseekers, which are your warriors, and some Beastmen and the Linemen, which would give you 11 players, 2 rerolls, because I put them at 60,000, which again, similar to the other Chaos teams. No room for an Apothecary. So yeah, probably a difficult team to start with, because you'd only be having 2 of your Strength 4 players, but it would get in the big guy. Then we've got the safe roster, so this one gives you an extra reroll and an Apothecary, but it would only get 2 Painseekers and 2 Slangors and no big guy. Then we have the balanced roster, so this one would see you have the most Painseekers, a couple of Slangors, the rest linemen, still get you 3 rerolls but no Apothecary and no big guy yet. So there's still at least 2 players you'd want to get, and eventually maybe the other 2 Slangors as well, which isn't too dissimilar from how you got to start with Nurgle and Khorne, given the expense of some of their players as well. And finally, the Painseeker roster. If you wanted to go full Painseeker, full Strength 4 Chaos Warriors, you can go with what I think is very similar to a Nurgle starting roster, where you can go 4 Painseekers, 1 Slangor, and then 6 Cultists, which gives you 11 players, but you'd only get 2 rerolls. No Pain Spawn and no Apothecary. So there are several potential different rosters to start with. But again, much like the other Chaos teams, you cannot get everything to begin with. You've got to have to build up to the kind of team that you eventually want to get to. So, there you go. That was my idea for a Slaanesh team. I hope you liked it and enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think. Is it overpowered? Is it weak? I think the one thing it does do is it does fit the theme of Slaanesh, but maybe it fits it too much to the point where it wouldn't be competitive, or it would be over-competitive. Time will tell to see whether we actually get a Slaanesh team. I hope we will. It'd be nice if at some point they are going to finish Blood Bowl, it'd be nice to have all 4 Chaos Gods represented as a team of their own now. I've often said the other way of doing it would have been to give marks that give Chaos Chosen team a particular mono-god flavour, but I think that might be a little bit too much work when you could just release a Slaanesh team, for example. So let me know what you think. These models are from the AOS range, Steel Games Workshop. Obviously they wouldn't look exactly like that, you wouldn't have weapons, but just to give you a kind of feel of the Slaanesh look, I think they've done a great job with the Slaanesh range in AOS. And even though I'm a much bigger Warhammer Fantasy fan, I would be very happy to see models like this introduced into Warhammer Fantasy for a Slaanesh faction. So I imagine a Slaanesh team that looked more like this would be very popular as well. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thank you very much. Bye for now.